मंगलम भगवान वीरो मंगलम गौतम प्रभु।
ओम नमो अरिहन्ताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयर्याणं नमो वचायाणं नमो लोये सर्वसाहुणम्।
Jai Jinendra and welcome to Mangalam. Today we present to you a unique person who calls himself American Jain. In the second segment, we'll bring you a melodious bhajan by Sheila Sethia. Now I present to you the person who calls himself American Jain. He is Professor Gary L. Francione. He is the Distinguished Professor of Law and Nicholas Katzenbach Scholar of Law at Rutgers University School of Law in New Jersey. Jai Jinendra and welcome to Mangalam, Professor Francione. You are a professor of law specializing in animal rights law. Practicing this in this country of predominantly meat-eating culture must be difficult. How did you get to specialize in this field?
Jai Jinendra. Well, after I became a vegan, I started becoming very interested in our violence to non-human animals as an intellectual matter. And I was a lawyer, and I then entered the university. I left the practice of law and I entered the university, and I was teaching, among other things, a course in the philosophy of law, and I started teaching about animal rights as part of that. And then I started becoming more and more interested in it. When I came to Rutgers in 1990, I started the Rutgers Animal Rights Law Clinic, which was an academic enterprise where students got academic credit for learning animal rights theory, but also working with me and Anna Charlton, my colleague and my partner. We actually did cases. We represented students that didn't want to cut up animals as part of their classroom experience. We represented prisoners who wanted strict vegetarian food. We worked on a number of different cases. You're correct to say that it's difficult to do this sort of work in a country of meat eaters. We don't have the clinic anymore. We had it from 1990 to 2000, and now I spend my time teaching basically about nonviolence to animals, and I write books. I'm now writing my 5th or 6th book on animal rights, and I teach a course in human rights and animal rights with Anna Charlton, and we have about 70 students in 2 sections of that class this semester, and we talk about Jainism in that class. As a matter of fact, the students in that class will each get a copy of Jaina publication 901, which is a little book called Jainism, Religion of Compassion and Ecology, and all the students will get a copy of that book, and courtesy of my good friend Pravin Shah from the Jaina Education Committee. So I came to become, I became interested in animal rights and in animal rights law as a result of my becoming a strict vegetarian and starting to take this issue seriously. Is it difficult in a country of meat eaters? Yes, it is, but I never give up. I talk about veganism and nonviolence all the time. I teach it, I talk it, and I try to live it. And so, you know, it's a challenge because this is a violent, materialistic country. But that doesn't mean we have the right to become frustrated or to lose hope. It means we have to do what we can every day to try to decrease the ahimsa, or the ahimsa rather, and to increase the ahimsa. And so what I try to do is to encourage people to take the principle of nonviolence seriously. I try to encourage people to become vegans, and I teach students, and I write my books, and I have a website, and I talk about these things.
Thank you, Professor. Now I would like to ask you, how did you get attracted to Jain religion? Was that before getting into this field, or it was after this field became your interest?
My interest, my academic interest in animal ethics, animals and the law, things of that nature, that came pretty closely, followed pretty closely with my becoming a vegan and starting to take these ideas seriously. And then my interest in ahimsa, you know, then I started developing an interest in ahimsa. Now remember, I've been a vegan for 26, 27 years. At the time I became a vegan, I was aware of what Jainism, I had read about Jainism when I was a young person, and when I became a vegan and I started becoming interested in ahimsa, I started reading more about Jainism, but I'd never met a Jain before, and I grew up in upstate New York, and at the time, 30 years ago, I don't think that there were a lot of Jains in this country. I had certainly never met a Jain. So it's not that there were Jains around that you could go and talk to. And what I was finding was that it was very difficult to even come by Jain literature. There was some things that I got that were really bad. I remember some things that I got early on were very badly translated into English, very badly translated. I didn't even understand what they were talking about. And so it was very hard actually to learn about Jain religion. I would say about in the early 1990s, I had the good fortune to go to Canada to give some talks into Toronto, and I met some people. I met some of Jains, and those were the first real live Jains I ever met. Were in Toronto, and I was immediately attracted because I wanted to learn more about this, and they were very interested in teaching me, and so I got some materials from them, but again, you know, it's difficult to learn these things without having teachers, and so I learned what I could on my own, and I deepened my knowledge. I would say that my real knowledge of Jainism came when I started studying meditation seriously, and that is really in many ways what helped deepen my understanding of Jainism, and I'm very, very grateful to Samniji Mudit and Samniji Shukla of the Jain Vishwa Bharati Center in Edison, because they've spent probably hundreds of hours with me, talking with me about Jainism and teaching me, but also the people I've met in the Jain community, whether it's Dilip Shah, who is the president of Jaina, or Sulika Jain, who is a former president of Jaina, that I had the good fortune to meet, who is very knowledgeable about ahimsa, and I was able to. He has spent a great deal of time talking with me, and Pravin Shah, who is the head of the education committee of Jaina, is just a wonderful man, and will spend as much time with me as I want, explaining to me, you know, differences between Nishanaya and Vyavaharanaya and all sorts of. I mean, whatever questions I have, he'll spend hours talking with me about them. And he's working on this project called the Jain E-Library, which is just a wonderful, wonderful educational resource for all of us who are into Jain Dharma. But so you know, I've had the good fortune now of actually becoming part of the Jain community in a more personal way, because really, as a Western person, as an American Jain, you really do need people to teach you. A lot of the ideas of Jainism are in many ways, they're counterintuitive to Western materialistic culture, and so you really do need guides. You you need teachers, and I've been very fortunate to have deepened my knowledge of Jainism as a result of my becoming part of the community.
Thank you. My next question is, how do you relate to principles of Jain religion? And do you think they have any relevance in today's world?
Well, I try to live the principles of Jainism. I mean, I take these things very, very seriously. I take ahimsa very seriously. I try every day, as hard as I can, to observe the principle of ahimsa, which requires that I not engage in any sort of violence in my thought, my speech, my conduct. Now, in terms of my conduct, I don't eat animal products. I don't wear animal products. I don't use any animal products. I endeavor always to be kind to people that I'm interacting with. When I'm driving on the New Jersey Turnpike and I'm constantly exposed to the terrible drivers that I encounter on the New Jersey Turnpike, I try to keep a state of equanimity and not to get, it's at every step I try to preserve equanimity, and I try to preserve, I try never to think inauspiciously, or to speak inauspiciously, or to act inauspiciously. So yes, it does inform my life. I also I read every day. I try to read. Well, I succeed most days in reading something. Whether it's Samayasara or I read some Jain literature every day, and I also meditate. I will say the Navkar mantra 108 times. On most days I will do the Navkar mantra 108 times. And so Jainism is a part of my life. I consider myself a Jain. I'm an American Jain, I'm an Indian Jain. So, and that's, that there are, in a sense, there's a part of me that's, it's ironic because there's a part of me that's, because I am an American Jain and I came at this as a result of my attraction to the spiritual principles, I really am deeply embedded, and I'm very, very interested in that spiritual tradition. So in a sense, I'm really intimately connected with Jainism. But in a sense, I'm not, because I'm not Indian and I wasn't born into a Jain family. So in a sense, I will always, to some degree, be different, because I'm not an Indian Jain. On the other hand, the Indian Jains are always wonderful to me, and everybody makes me feel like I'm a member of the family, and that's great. I love that, and it's great. It's great. I have a community, and it's interesting for me to be a member of that community, because when I'm with my community, I'm the only person who looks like me, and everybody else is Indian. So it's sort of interesting. But yeah, and do I think Jainism has relevance in today's world? The answer to that question is, I think Jain has the most relevance of anything I've ever considered in my life in terms of having relevance in the world. If we don't start taking the principles of Jainism seriously, there's not going to be a world for us to, there's not going to be a world much longer for us to do much in. And so, yeah, I do think it's extremely relevant. I think that Jainism provides a simple, wonderful roadmap to peace and nonviolence, both in our own selves. Jainism teaches self-absorption. It teaches us achieve nonviolence to yourself, but it also gives us the roadmap to peace with other people and a peaceful world.
Now, in your professional life, you must come across a lot of young Jains teaching law. Do you have any advice for them, the young Jains and youth in general?
Yeah, I do. Be grateful you were born into a Jain family. Be grateful that you've been given this Dharma as part of your childhood. Take it seriously. If you take it seriously, you'll be a much happier person. You'll be a much more peaceful person. Gandhiji said that we should all be the change that we want to see in the world, that each of us should be the change that we want to see in the world. Jainism gives us a very, very clear roadmap for how we can be living examples of the principle of ahimsa, and we desperately need that more than any time in human history. There is more violence now than there has ever been. And we become more and more and more anesthetized to it. We watch these violent movies, we play violent video games, we listen to violent, I mean, we are surrounded by violence of one sort or another. We're surrounded by materialism, which is a form of violence. We're surrounded by greed. We're living in troubled times. Jainism gives us answers to these problems. Jainism tells us that whatever the answer is, violence is never the answer. And that's such a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful idea. The idea that no matter what happens, violence is never an appropriate answer to any sort of problem. And that's what Jainism teaches us. And so I would say, take seriously your Jain Dharma. Learn it, follow it, practice it. Practice it every day. Think about it every day. Read the Jain literature is one, and I don't even, I can only read the English, the translations. And the Jain books I have, they're wonderful books. They are just wonderful. And every time I read any one of them, I just am amazed at how much insight they contain. And the other thing is this, that if you were born into a family where you learned Hindi or Gujarati, be happy about that, because I hope in my next life I come back in a family that, where I learn Gujarati or Hindi, because let me tell you, it makes life a lot easier than if you don't know those languages. In my next life, I hope to be able to go to a Jain temple full of Gujarati people and understand something that is being said, unlike my present situation where I don't really understand very much. And so in a sense, that keeps me from sort of getting deeper into the tradition, that I don't have the Indian languages. So those of you who are born into families, that speak Gujarati or speak Hindi in the house, don't lose that. Don't lose it. Don't lose it, and don't get upset with your parents when they tell you that you got to go to Gujarati class or you got to go to Hindi class. Go. Learn, go, because you can learn it easier when you're young. When you're young, you can learn those things. And when you use them in your house, they become part of you. You think in that, you become bilingual. It's very, very hard when you're an adult to learn Gujarati or learn Hindi, particularly if you're not used to that script and the different languages. So don't minimize or devalue your Jainism. I mean, we tend to take for granted things that are given to us. That's the problem. That's a natural aspect of being human, is we tend to take for granted things that are given to us. So if we're born into a Jain family, we think, Jainism, it's what my parents do. And the answer is, no, it's what you should do. And I tell this to my students. I tell this to young people. I talk to young Jains. As a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago, I was given the honor of teaching a Pathshala class at the Cherry Hill Temple in Cherry Hill. And I talked with a group of, 30 or 40 young people, and I said this to them: don't ever take your Jainism for granted. Be happy that you were born into a Jain family and that you have this available to you in a way that I never did. Grab it, learn it, make it part of you. It will change you for the better, and it will help you change the world.
Thank you very much, Professor Francione, for joining us today in Mangalam. I hope you enjoyed meeting Professor Francione. Please don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a short break with a melodious bhajan with Sheila Sethia. For your tax-free donations, suggestions and comments, please visit mangalamshow.com. Welcome back to Mangalam. Now here is Sheila Sethia taking you to another melodious journey of bhajans.
अजवाड़ा देखाड़ो अंतर द्वार उघाड़ो
Thanks for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed today's program. We would like to know your opinion about today's program, so please write to us at mangalamshow@gmail.com. For more information, please log on to www.mangalamshow.com. Until next time, we bring another exciting episode of Mangalam. Please don't forget to tune in. Until then, Jai Jinendra.
जब जय